How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Shot Clock Podcast. My name is Nathan Shaw. I'm joined by none other than the assistant coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, Chad Forcier. Coach Forcier, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Nathan. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. You guys came short in the playoffs this year. Second-round loss to the Heat, who advanced on to the finals. Amazing run by them and amazing run by you guys. But I think that's not one of the most defining moments of the playoffs. One of the most defining had to be your guys' walkout in the boycott in the first round against I believe it was game 4 of the Magic game. So kind of what was that like in person during that boycott?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have very many great stories to tell because I was actually in quarantine in the bubble. So I wasn't in the locker room at game 4. And actually, it was going to be game 5. And so I had to leave the bubble because of a death in the family. And when I came back, the NBA required me to quarantine for 7 days in a separate, casita in the bubble. So the day that happened, I was sitting by myself, locked in quarantine, 100 yards from the team, the main tower where the team was. And they were obviously at the game, so I was getting ready to watch it on TV. And probably 2 minutes before tip-off, when I was waiting for the game to start, my phone started blowing up with different media members, that I know, wondering what was going on, and I didn't even know what they were talking about. And so it was something that I watched, unfold in real time, just like they did, maybe just like you did, and it was, it was a historical moment, obviously, to say the least. But I was trying to get information from my guys, the other coaches that were obviously at the game and in the locker room on scene, in terms of trying to get my own questions answered too. So it was a big moment.
What's crazy about that is it's like everybody watching it real time. You can even go through NBA Twitter at the time. It's like your feed's blowing up back and forth about what's happening, what's going on. And it's just everyone was in shock. And for you, you had to be in shock too, which is crazy that you were kind of experiencing it real time like all fans was, even as a personnel of the Milwaukee Bucks. But I mean, a little bit on with that, kind of Black Lives Matter was a big part of the season restart that Adam Silver focused on. And in the original memo, what do you remember from the origination of the bubble? What do you remember your thoughts being?
Of the bubble itself, related to the coronavirus, or are you speaking more in terms of the racial pandemic and things of that sort?
We can go either or, both terms, honestly. I mean, both of them kind of had to do with the bubble.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they, both pandemics collided at the same time, and the bubble was built to try to address, saving the season as best we could in light of the coronavirus pandemic. And then when the racial pandemic, fell upon all of us, it suddenly became a dual task of not only trying to put together a successful bubble as it related to keeping everybody healthy and trying to get to the finish line, of the season, but also being able to take advantage of that opportunity and the spotlight that would be on the bubble, because it was such a historical, moment in the world of sport, and have it, be an opportunity where all of our players and coaches, the league, as a whole, could shine a light upon, the most critical matters, in terms of all the racial injustices that have, continued to go on, and on in our country.
I've got to be honest. It's weird doing interviews with even a coach like you through Zoom, and that was a big part of the bubble as well, was doing those interviews through Zoom post game. How different is it now doing these type of interviews compared to in person with the media?
I mean, during the bubble, I really didn't have too much media interviews. I was on Zoom a lot for different capacities, with a lot of different people, a lot of different reasons. But players and our head coach, Mike Budenholzer, obviously did everything via the the Zoom format. And there were some media members obviously on campus in the bubble that were able to be there to be firsthand witnesses and observe, but there was obviously no in-person contact, and it's obviously a different world. I mean, it's a different way of interacting, and it's a different way of engaging. But I think we've all figured out that you have to find a means to an end, and there's probably been some benefit to it, even though it's less personal.
Yeah, with your job at stake for a while there for the first 4 months, like you said, means to an end. It was for those 4 months the NBA was kind of postponed. Were you unsure about the season kind of returning, or what was your thoughts on if the season did return at the time?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody across the NBA, didn't matter who you were. If you were a coach or a executive or a player, staff member, people that were employees, that are employees in the league office, everything was on a tightrope. And it was a very concerning time for a long time. People were obviously, saying that we were trapped in limbo, would be putting it mildly. But undoubtedly there was steep uncertainty about the future and what would happen with the season, and it just had to be, all the decisions were being made in real time, without the benefit of any history to draw upon or previous experiences. And so the leadership, from the league office with Adam Silver and his whole group, all the way down through our team owners, our team general managers, head coaches, just the leadership structure to navigate, those waters in such an unprecedented time, was just phenomenal. But we were all undoubtedly very uncertain about what would happen.
Yeah, I remember sitting there as a fan myself, kind of that day of March 13th, whenever the season got postponed originally at the Mavericks versus, or no, it was the Thunder versus Jazz game when Rudy Gobert he got taken out because of COVID, and that kind of threw off the whole league. And I remember sitting there kind of thinking like, wow, this is crazy. Like the season may not return. Like we may not see someone win a championship this year, which kind of brought to terms the asterisks on the championship. What was your thoughts on people saying there's an asterisk on the championship this year?
Well, there is definitely an asterisk, but it's a great, shining, gold, bright, happy asterisk. I think that it's, I tip my cap to the Los Angeles Lakers, Frank Vogel and his coaching staff and their players, to be able to navigate everything that happened. When you talk about going back to training camp starting basically October 1st of 2019, and they finished the year on October 11th of 2020. So their season was more than a year long. And, that just to try to start and then to stop and then to try to restart, and all the things that they had to navigate this year, including Kobe Bryant, passing, and to be able to be locked in that bubble for 90 whatever days they were in there. I didn't even finish counting them, but they were in there a long time. It's spectacular that they were able to persevere and overcome all of that for so long, and finally get to the top of the mountain. So it should have an asterisk by it because it was historical. It's never been seen before, of course. Hopefully we'll never see it again. The challenges that it brought forth were just insurmountable at times, and ultimately they're indescribable, except for people that that went through it. So I have a world of respect for the newly crowned champions.
Yeah, and like you said, it was a historical season indeed, between David Stern's passing, Kobe's passing, COVID, Black Lives Matter protests going on. Everything was so historical at this season. Where do you think personally this might be one of the most important seasons of all time?
Well, I mean, undoubtedly it's going to go down as, probably the most memorable of all time because we've never seen anything like it. So, I hope that that when all is said and done, that the efforts and the attention and the time, paid toward, bringing light to social injustices and racial inequality. I hope that has, a lasting impact, and that everybody will continue to move forward with that. And so I hope that from that angle, this season ends up, leaving a legacy.
I want to transition a little bit into your career yourself as an assistant coach for multiple teams. And I mean, you've been a part of so many great teams. You've been a part of the league for a long time now. And what's been some of your best memories as a coach?
Well, I could probably talk to you for a long time about that, but there's a lot of special ones. Um, I always start from the beginning. I was very, very fortunate to get my opportunity, when I was 19 years old in Seattle, in my hometown, with the Seattle Sonics. George Karl was the head coach then, and I got an opportunity to get my foot in the door. And that's, of course, something I'll never forget. In those 5 years that I spent with Coach Karl and the Sonics, we had great teams. All 5 years we averaged 55 or more wins a year. Most years we were either first or second, in the West. And got to go to, my very first year, got to go to a conference finals, Western Conference Finals. Ended up playing Phoenix with, a Charles Barkley-led Phoenix team that went down to a Game 7, played in Phoenix. And, that'll be something. We lost that game and didn't have a chance to go to the NBA Finals and play Michael Jordan and the Bulls that year. But, that's something that stands out. Couple of heartbreaking first-round exits, along the way, even though we were a number 1 seed. And then, ultimately getting to finally make it to the NBA Finals in 1996. We had an unbelievable Western Conference Finals, against the Utah Jazz, John Stockton and Karl Malone, Jeff Hornacek, a lot of other great names. And just that was another conference final that went down to Game 7. We had a Game 7 that time on our home floor in Seattle, and it was one of the greatest games I've ever been a part of. Still to this day in my career, it was Game 7 of the 96 Western Conference Finals against Utah. But ultimately being able to get to the final series, and again get a chance to go against Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, all the guys with the Bulls. So that stands out to me. I went through a tough experience when I was coaching in Indiana. I was part of the Malice at the Palace, a brawl that happened between the Pacers and the Pistons in the Palace of Auburn Hills, and in Detroit, Michigan. And that isn't obviously a bright spot, but it's something that that stands out in my mind. And then obviously I got to spend 9 years in San Antonio coaching, with Greg Popovich, and get an opportunity to be with Hall of Fame players Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker, undoubtedly a future Hall of Famer Kawhi Leonard. Just having a chance to be part of that organization was a highlight. It was extreme privilege. Lots of memories there. Obviously, high level of winning. A lot of trips to the conference finals. Where we were knocking on the door, getting into the NBA Finals again. My very first year, when I was with them in 2007-08, they were the defending champions after having won the 2007 championship against Cleveland with a young LeBron James. So we were trying to defend our championship in 2007 and 8, and got to the conference finals against the Lakers and Kobe Bryant. And, we weren't healthy enough ultimately, and couldn't get out of that series. And then, another time in 2012, being in a conference finals with Oklahoma City, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, and ended up losing that series. But that's memorable. And then in 13 and 14, we got to the finals both years, and extreme heartache. In 2013, we lost. Had a chance to win a championship late in Game 6 and lost that game, and then came back and had to play Game 7 and had a hard-fought Game 7 in Miami and couldn't get it done. So to lose that championship was very painful, and especially the heartache and ultimately the heartbreak of how we lost, late in the last 28 seconds of Game 6 was something you'll never forget. but then being able to come back and bring the same team back the next year and get to have the same exact NBA finals against the Miami Heat again, and have a chance to, to avenge that loss and atone for those sins, and ultimately get the job done was, of course, the highlight of a lifetime. So, there's been a lot of things. I just finished my 24th year in the NBA, and I just tried to throw a few of them at you, but there's a lot in between.
Well, yeah, it seems like all 24 years you've been one of the luckiest coaches of all time as well. I mean, you've been a part of a championship team almost every year. So, I mean, that's got to be a blessed feeling itself.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've been able to work for some great coaches, probably a lot of Hall of Fame guys, and obviously a lot of Hall of Fame players. When I was coaching in Indiana, I didn't mention, I got to coach Reggie Miller for the last 2 years of his Hall of Fame career, and we had great teams early. In my years there, the first year or two, we were very good, and being able to work for someone like George Karl, who I believe deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Rick Carlisle, I coached for him twice in Detroit and in Indiana, and he obviously won a championship in 2011 with Dallas, and he for sure will be a Hall of Famer when his career is over. And obviously Coach Pop speaks for himself. So I've been fortunate to be in places like that with some great players. Obviously starting in Seattle, Gary Payton, I got to be with him for 5 years, and he's locked into the Hall of Fame already. And, things of that sort, I consider myself fortunate.
I mean, you've been able to coach such amazing talent all throughout your career, and even at such a young age, like 19 when you started. What's kind of the stress like coaching such great players all throughout?
Well, the stress is more about just the ultimate pressure that you put on yourself because you want to not only meet expectations, you always want to exceed them. And nobody has higher expectations for yourself, than yourself. So, you want to make sure that you're giving your very best to your players and to your franchise and ultimately to your fans. And you just are always concerned about making sure that you're doing all you can to help a player, maximize his full potential and maximize his career and ultimately realize his own goals and his own dreams, for his personal career. You just want to be somebody that's able to, sufficiently help that player, to the best of your ability. So, there's a lot of pride that goes into that. And again, that's, the pressure comes from yourself.
You mentioned coaching under Greg Popovich at one point of your career for about 9 years, I believe you said, correct?
That's right.
And so throughout coaching with Greg Popovich, one of the most amazing, talented coaches we've ever had in the NBA history, what was kind of your takeaways from him?
I mean, I couldn't have been luckier to have a chance to work for Pop, not only, one time, but to be there for 9 years was very, just fortunate. And I love Pop, like a father, and he's just somebody that is not only a phenomenal basketball coach, that obviously goes without saying, but more than a basketball coach, he's just an incredible leader. I tell people all the time he could for sure run for president of the United States, and I actually mean that. I believe it. I think he would be an incredible leader of the free world. He just is so highly intelligent, and just such a great leader of people, and such a great understands the moment, and feels people and reads people, and he's just phenomenal in that regard. So I enjoyed the opportunity to spend so much time, not only around him as a human being, because he's a outstanding person, and such a fun person to be around, but to beyond learning the basketball from him, it was a great privilege to be able to learn leadership from him.
You should have had to run for president this year. We don't have a lot of options. You should have talked him into it. But
he's still busy doing his first job. He still likes coaching.
What is he now, like 70s, or is he in 60s?
I don't know.
You don't know for sure?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
But throughout, I mean, this year was a tough year for you as a coach. It was the second year in a row that you guys kind of had the best record in the league, but came short in the playoffs. But besides the playoffs, how do you guys go in and out of each year being such an amazing team?
Well, you don't. I mean, you're fortunate to start with a good core of players. I mean, you obviously have to have enough good players to give yourself a chance. And we've obviously got some really high level players all over our roster. We've got a lot of depth. Obviously, the top of our roster goes without saying when you've got a 2-time MVP player in Giannis. And, the last 2 years in a row, Chris Middleton's been an all-star. Brooke Lopez and Eric Bledsoe have both, deserve to be all-stars. They've knocked on the door of all-star burst both years. So, when you start at the top like that, with that kind of talent, you're in pretty good shape in terms of getting a head start. And then we've got a lot of depth on our roster too, with a lot of talented young players. So nothing's a given, nothing's guaranteed. Every year you start a season, no matter how you finished the year before, you're not continuing. You start over. You start from scratch. It's a brand new journey. You literally start over from step one, day one, and you have to navigate the journey in front of you. And you're rebuilding chemistry and camaraderie, and you have to navigate the highs and lows of what comes with a season in terms of how scheduling goes and how injuries go and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, just having a good group of guys on your roster with enough talent in place is always a nice place to start. But that's all you get, is just a place to start from.
Now, I do want to ask this question. Do you think this is his prime yet, or is the prime still coming?
No, I don't think he's reached it yet.
So that must be something we might have to wait for next season to kind of see happen here. But I mean, like I said, in the postseason, it's been one of the things that you guys have struggled the most on, kind of going on. You guys always have made it to, last year you made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. This year you made it to the semifinals. And that's one of the things you guys have struggled on. So what was kind of the devastation like this year in the locker room amongst players and coaches and even staff?
I wouldn't describe it as devastation. It was obviously, bitter, and it was certainly, disappointment and frustration. But the circumstances are always the driver of any team, every season. And one of the most meaningful things that you have to have on your side is your health. And obviously we weren't healthy. We didn't have Bledsoe at the start of the series, and obviously we missed Giannis for a game and a half with a bad ankle. And and then you have to have some luck on your side too. I mean, it has to break your way, and that's true for everybody. And we had an unfortunate call in game 2, I guess it was, at the very last play of the game. And those kinds of things, whether it's a sprained ankle or a strained hamstring, or maybe a ball that doesn't bounce your way, or a call that doesn't go your way, without all of those things in place, you're never going to be able to realize, the extent of your dreams. And so we had a bad combination in that series, and everybody that's been around this business understand that that's how it goes. So again, I don't think anyone walked away feeling devastated. I think there was legitimate, bitter taste, legitimate frustration and disappointment, deep disappointment. But also, I think it'll serve us well in terms of strengthening our resolve, to propel ourselves forward next year.
One thing I noticed a lot on your Instagram stories is the wine. The wine's been one of your big things since getting out of the bubble. So if you don't mind telling us, what's your favorite wine to drink?
Yeah, you're observant. I definitely enjoy a good bottle of wine, and I've got a lot of pretty diverse interests in different grapes and different regions of the world that produce wine. If I had to pick one, if I was left on an island with one bottle of wine, I would probably end up drinking a bottle of Pinot Noir, probably from the Willamette Valley in Oregon. And if I had to whittle that region down to one bottle, I think I'd probably drink a bottle of Pinot Noir produced by a winery called Beaufrères.
Well, Coach, we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna let you go ahead and go, but I appreciate you for coming on. It's crazy at 16 years old being able to interview a professional NBA coach like you. So that's been around the league for 24 years and been such part of great championship teams and great championship contenders. So I appreciate you for coming on.
Well, Nathan, I wish you all the best. I'm glad I could be part of your young career, and I wish you nothing but success moving forward in whatever your ambitions are.
All right, thank you, Coach. We'll see you later.